Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the session. Just wanted to thank everyone for participating. We still have some folks still joining in, but in the interest of getting the session started, because we do have a great lineup of the panelists that are here today, and I wanted to get the session going. Thank you for all of you joining, and we want to welcome you in celebration as well of International Women's Day. We wanted to hold this session around science and technology, each for equal, which is the theme for International Women's Day. And together with the state government of Victoria, we're holding this event, and a fantastic lineup of women to be able to address some of the issues and share in their particular areas as well, in the areas of collaboration, mindset change, and how science and technology is actually playing a role in today's world. My name is Ziki. I'm from SGInnovate. I lead the community and brand team here. And for those who do not know, our mission at SGInnovate is to help entrepreneurial scientists build deep tech startups that are looking to solve big global problems. So with this year's International Day, the theme is each for equal. So what does that actually mean? It really means that it takes each and every one of us to take the necessary action to achieve equality. And we believe that equality and diversity, we believe in equality and diversity across the board, not just in gender, but also in cultural diversity. And with our panel here, coming from different parts of the world, across different industries, I think we're very well versed today to be able to address some of these issues, and for each of us, each of them to be sharing their experience in their particular areas. I do want to do a shout out. Do follow us on LinkedIn and across the social media channels on Facebook and also Twitter. Follow us, SGInnovate. And we also have a platform that we launched in partnership with IMDA called the SG Women in Tech, and we're on LinkedIn. Please follow us there as well. So with that, let's start the session. The global pandemic, as we know now, has really disrupted how we live, work, and play, okay? And I think today what we want to talk about is the importance of science and tech, as we've seen in addressing the global pandemic, and also in facilitating how we live and play. This session is on Zoom. For many of you who've attended SGInnovate events before, we've always done that at our premises at 32 Carpenter, and we're missing the face-to-face interaction, but we've moved everything online to Zoom, and we're finding that these conversations are happening quite effectively. I think we're missing the physical networking, but it continues to be really, really important. And so today, with the wonderful panels that I have of lovely women from across the world and also from across the science and tech industry, I want to be discussing the international landscape and delve deeper into topics such as diversity and cross-border collaboration, and in the context of the pandemic and how it has impacted these areas. So with that, I would like to ask each of the panelists to please introduce yourselves, and let's keep that to 30 seconds each if possible, because we do have quite a bit to run through. Sydney, may I start with you, please?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Ziki, and thank you, SGInnovate, for having me on this panel discussion. This is Sydney. I run the Diagnostics Development Hub, or DXD Hub. So we do translation of, we take product out, we take technology and IP output from research and development and turn them into products for healthcare delivery systems. So diagnostics actually is one of is our focus, which is of course very relevant for this COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, Sydney. Julie?
Yeah, good morning. Great to be here. So my name's Julie Angus. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Open Ocean Robotics. We're based in Victoria, BC, Canada, an early stage company producing autonomous solar powered boats to help us understand our oceans. So overcoming some of the challenges associated with collecting ocean data, really trying to better understand our oceans. Still about 80% of them are not understood, poorly explored, and technology can really go a long way to overcoming those challenges.
Thank you, Julie. Amanda, please.
Thanks, Ziki. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Amanda Caples. I'm the lead scientist for the state of Victoria. You might know it as Melbourne in Australia. And so my role is really to align and connect our science and technology across our higher education and research institutes into partnerships with industry and government to solve some of our challenges. And of course, with COVID-19, that's been a big focus for us in recent times. My own personal background is from the biotech pharmaceutical industry, and so we have had a lot of resources that we've been able to pull together at short notice to respond to COVID-19.
Lovely. Lynn, please.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Lynn Lee and I'm the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Royal Dutch Shell. I'm based in Singapore. I have been in Shell for 18 years. And my background, personal background, I'm a psychologist by training, and prior to Shell, was also in governments and in consulting.
Thank you. And Emmy?
Hello, good morning. I'm Amy Kaneko. I'm very honored to join this seminar among other distinguished speakers from different countries and different backgrounds. I'm director of Japan Science and Technology Agency Singapore office. My agency, which is called JST in short, does a lot of things in Japan, from investing taxpayers' money in basic research and technology transfer to guiding students to seek their career in research and development. My task here in Singapore is to function as a gateway, connecting Southeast Asia, including Singapore, to Japan's universities, research institutes, and companies, and vice versa. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmy. And so to all the participants, thank you again for joining. I would maybe give us a shout out on where you are from. We've learned as we launch these online events that we've had participation from across the globe, even Europe in the wee hours of their morning. So please do a shout out in the chat function to tell us where you're signing in from. And we would like to also take questions from all participants. And if you would address your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, we will then take them along the way. So let's start the session. I think that with the pandemic, we've seen that collaboration is very, very important. And we've seen collaboration with research institutes and researchers from internationally, and with the public-private sector partnerships as well. So let's talk a little bit about international collaboration. Why does it make sense to collaborate with international partners, and when will it be the most effective? Give us your perspectives, Emmy and Amanda, please.
Would you like me to start? So,
go for it.
So I think, so no one has all the capability, all the knowledge and all the resources. So I think the benefit of international collaboration really comes to the fore in situations like this, where we've all got a common purpose. And I think to really make international collaborations work, we really need that alignment of interests. And there is no greater alignment of interest in terms of our current situation in finding a vaccine and probably it's diagnostics and it's therapeutics, and it's a whole range of different products that will come out of this. And so I think what we're seeing, and the benefit of international collaboration, is we're bringing to the fore the best of the best and actually making linkages across different organizations, across different disciplines and capabilities, so that it's really bringing together the epidemiologists with the discovery biologists, as well as the translators of that discovery. And, you know, we've got an enormous challenge, but I'm optimistic that with the extent of the collaborations and the investment that is going into a whole range of products to help us with this situation, that we're going to be more successful as a result of working well together.
Well, thanks for that, Amanda. And I think also, you know, this brings into this discussion around diversity as well, right? Do you see that with these collaborations, diversity has an impact and it benefits these collaborations?
Absolutely. And it comes diversity of disciplines, it's diversity of gender, of culture, because we all come at problems from a different standpoint, and just having someone who's used to looking at things in a particular way, working with someone who's ordinarily looks at it in a completely from a different starting position, we are able to come up with the intersection and we're creating the intersection and the interface around which innovation it just comes out naturally.
Fantastic. Emmy, do you, in your role, when you look at collaboration with between Japan, Singapore, and I guess across the region as well, what's your view? What have you seen has been most effective, and what is it that you look out for as you look at collaborating with across the different markets and industries?
Yeah, in my opinion, Singaporeans generally know the importance of international collaboration because we have a very diverse and international society here in Singapore. But maybe for Japanese people or for the rest of the world, where international collaboration is not so, you know, strong, maybe my answer is more relevant. International collaboration makes sense when you feel like two or more groups of people from different countries can complement each other with different strengths. So, for example, Japan's known to be good in manufacturing, and as you can see from the fact that it has made a lot of different kinds of robots, for example, in medical science too. Then what if Japan's not so good in making software or systems to be embedded in such hardware? Then this is one idea to build such capacity in the same group, but it's probably more efficient and serves the purpose better if we could bring in another group from like Singapore, France, or India, which has strength in software, to be combined with the hardware group. So as I said in my introduction, my task is really to connect people from different countries and different organizations. That's the purpose. That's for the purpose of creating synergistic effect by this collaboration.
Fantastic. Thank you. I want to also, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Ziki, maybe I just want to add a little bit on that international collaboration. And I do agree fully with Amanda and Amy that I suppose it's not a collaboration that we are just doing now because of the pandemics, but because of the existing ongoing collaboration that has been going on for years. Actually, when something like this happens, it actually accelerates how we can very, very quickly work together and towards a common goal. For example, the first thing that actually happened was GSET. GSET was where everybody in the world uploaded their sequences of the virus because it's so new, right? So that actually was incredible. The minute it was known and uploaded, it just you know, stimulated everybody in the world to try and make something, because now they know what is the pathogen. And the diagnostics kits became available very, very soon after that. So I think that's a very, you know, and today we continue to see, today there are thousands of sequences that are being uploaded every day. And every single new evidence and information that we have is being very quickly shared across the world in terms of preprints, in terms of publications, and all that actually would lead to that collaboration that would actually, I see that as almost leveling the accessibility, you know, in this pandemic, because people are a lot quicker to share. And because everyone has the same accessibility now. Everyone is accessing through, you know, this online, you know, chat and social media, and everyone has the same visibility at the same time. So leveling the accessibility in that sense. And also in terms of, as what Amanda and Amy was saying, that every country has its own expertise and its own sort of availability of different things. And this international collaboration allows countries to say, okay, if I'm good at this, but I need this knowledge or this materials, which you have, maybe the two of us working together actually make the end products, and then we can make it available for both of us. So we are seeing some of that happening as well, which is really a good direction. You know, this is, to me, one of the, maybe if there's such a thing of silver lining in this pandemic, I mean, this is one of the things that's kind of coming out.
Yeah, and it really is a sum of all parts, right? Is, as Amanda, you mentioned, is the best of the best from across the world. And this is where, you know, across humanity, we're hoping for the vaccine to be found, right? To be able to address this pandemic and to get back to life as normal as we can. But of course, we also know that it's going to be a new normal. We've established a new normal. I want to move the discussion a little bit again on collaboration, but in the areas of the public-private partnerships. How important is this as we drive innovation, whether it's pandemic related or beyond pandemic? I think across your roles, Julie, Sydney, and maybe even Lynn, in the areas of public-private partnership, what have you seen? What is the importance of this in being able to drive innovation? Julie, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah, public-private partnerships are extremely important for many companies, especially deep tech. You know, in our field, you know, long development cycles. Our end customers are often government, so being able to partner with the Canadian Coast Guard, as we have with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, has been very valuable in not only helping us determine the direction of our innovation, but having an end customer. Also, government plays a large role in setting priorities for a country, you know, whether it's focus on healthcare or sustainable oceans or environmental assessment. So by driving policy, they can really drive innovation in a certain direction. And, you know, I think this is more important than ever really now. You know, we're at this inflection point where we can decide how we're going to recover from this pandemic. And, you know, a big part of that will be the choices that governments take and the private public partnerships to, you know, decide if we're building a forward-looking future.
Thank you. Sydney, do you have any views on that?
Yeah, so this is actually it's a very relevant sort of bridge that is exactly what DXD Hub is trying to bridge. How do we use the capability, our expertise to enable private enterprises, the companies. And we have seen, for example, in this pandemic, so one of the things that we found out about this pandemic, and you know, it's not that we found out, but actually we realized that that it sort of accelerated things a lot from our perspective. In other words, things that maybe would have taken 3 years, we know in 3 months. So it really showed that really one of the challenges of a lot of the companies, especially the small companies, small medium enterprises in Singapore anyway, is the scale up, is the ramp up. So you may have technology, you have IPs and all kinds of R&D outputs, and maybe in a small scale it works, but it is that scale up to that mass scale, that manufacturing, that actually needs a more systematic approach. And that's actually directly in the expertise area of DXD Hub. So we have been able to take a research and R&D output and work with local enterprises and help them. So we actually develop the manufacturing processes. We take it through the pilot production. As a result, in the process, we now know how you need to ramp up if you have to manufacture that. And we then tech transfer and phase that into companies so they can do that and scale up for the mass market. So that, to me, is a very good example of how we can operationalize this public-private partnership. Amongst many other things that I think Julie has mentioned, the policy and also public sector being the #1 customers. Those are very important.
That's a good segue into my next question. Public policy. And Lynn, we talked a little bit about this as well in our discussion. Public policy in driving actions, yes, it is important, but really, do we as individuals, you know, the theme, each for equal, do we as individuals wait for public policy to actually take effect before we ourselves take that necessary action, right? And I want to get a perspective, Lynn, from you, because I think you have views on that. And Amanda, then I would also like you to share what you've done in your state in driving diversity across the board, because I think that's a deep belief of the Victoria state, from what I understand. So I would like to get a perspective on that. Lynn, maybe share with us your views.
Thanks, Vicky. Yeah, let me just add on to the earlier question as well, and you know, to reiterate what Amanda had said, that you know, when it comes to public policy, as well as then private companies, and then I guess, you know, individual action, a lot of it is intersection, right? So take Shell, for example. So what we've seen is that it has accelerated, you know, the energy transition journey. You know, it was something that we've already been working on, right? But I think with all the changes and with the economics, I think as well as with individuals, all of us, we've seen now, you know, a world where it is, where it's possible, yeah, to have low carbon footprint. Yeah, and what that means, yeah, but there is huge impact. So I think that's one around, you know, just thinking through to say, is it one or the other? Probably not, but there are consequences. Yeah, there are questions around conviction. Yeah, do we go back very quickly to the old normal? Possibly not, because we can't. Yeah, we are limited by resources, etc. But as we're, you know, limited by resources, what else do we do? Yeah, which brings me to then personal action. Yeah, for a company like Shell, I think one of the most immediate question is, as you then transform into a different company that is now required, what do you take care of? And I just had this conversation with my teams yesterday to say that it's very easy then for us to take action because it's urgent, right? You have to urgently make decisions around health, well-being of staff. The beauty of it is that then you do have the diversity of thought. But even then, when you make decisions, do we then, behind our backs, you know, do we then consciously think about, you know, reflecting that diversity in the new world? Yeah, so a question is, in Shell, you know, we're at 26.4% in terms of senior women, you know, leadership at the top echelon in C-suite. And the question is, do we then get on to 30% as we wanted in the short term, or do we now take that big leap and say, this is the opportunity? This is the opportunity now to look at gender equality, but not just set it as an aspiration that we talk about, but really look at the impact of what's happened, look at the way that work is done, as we've all articulated, but also look at perhaps not just the way that the work is done, but how it has been effectively done by people who now work remotely with technology, differently, you know, job share, different parts of the world, with the sole intention of bringing the best talent together, rather than whether it's male or female. So I think that is probably one of the big questions, you know, that companies should ask. And definitely is a question that Shell asked, and I think I'll encourage that, whether you're a big or small company, that is the key question to ask around diversity.
Thank you, Lynn. Amanda, you want to share what has happened in the state of Victoria?
Great, thanks, Ziki. So first of all, if I can start with the role of the public sector, and the way that I think about it is that we've got a number of different roles that we play either individually or collectively, depending on the situation. And I characterise it as mostly we're a facilitator or a broker to broker relationships, and mostly it's relations, because that's what collaboration is all about. So, so we play a facilitator role. We can be an investor in technologies, and we can be a customer of technologies, as Julie has mentioned. And in fact, particularly in North America, government has played a really important role to pull technologies along by being a demanding customer to which companies can respond to. And then finally, there's a role for government as a leader. And getting onto gender equality. So about 6 years ago now, the Victorian government had a commitment to and I'm talking about gender here now, but it is broader than that, as Ziki mentioned earlier. It's about a whole range of other equality measures that we're seeking to put in place. But this example is particularly one on gender, where there was a requirement for all Victorian boards, so government boards, whether it's water authorities or you name it, was right across the board, to have a target of 50% women represented on those boards. And at that time, the public sector here in Victoria was at about 30%, so we weren't doing too badly, but there was a big gap to where government sought us to be. And so as being part of the public sector, it was our role to deliver on that commitment. And I think my own experience and the experience of others was that initially in the first 3 months, and I think it only took 3 months, it was hard work for us to think about people other than the usual suspects to put forward on boards. But once you are motivated and there is an incentive to look beyond the traditional boundaries, it suddenly became easier. And we ended up with, after 6 months, it became not a problem at all. And to the point now in our state, it's very unusual. We've actually got a cultural, we've effected a cultural change such that we're looking for gender equality. We are looking for diversity cultural-wise because we are a multicultural society. And so it's really changed the norm and the expectation of the public about who they want to see, because what you see is a great indicator of what ultimately you'll get in terms of the diversity of views presented around the table. So on the back of that, and just recently, in fact, we're the first state to introduce a gender equality bill, and that is taking those steps further such that every Victorian government department, each public sector government agency has a requirement to develop a 4-year diversity plan that takes into account both gender, cultural diversity, as well as also gender diversity. So we are, and it goes back to leadership, we're not going to be effective in changing the culture of our society unless government is willing to bite the bullet, so to speak, and lead by example. And that's the process we've been through over the past 6 years, has been shifting us to the point where we've now got a legislated position where there is a requirement for us to stop talking about it and do something about it.
Thank you, Amanda. And that leads me to the next question on mindset change. The pandemic has effected a mindset change, right? We are forced into doing things differently, being creative and innovative in how we work and play. And, you know, fantastic when governments come and actually impose or make a rule around diversity and, you know, gender diversity, inclusivity. But many a times it may not be the soul of a company. Companies do it as a tick in the box. And I want to get that perspective. Maybe Lynn, you can share with us. I was very pleased to learn when I chatted with you that, you know, in Shell, you've had this policy for many, many years. And my perception has always been like in the energy sector, oil and gas is very male dominated. And we always hear about, oh, you know, the men who will not leave their positions because it's so comfortable. So it's difficult for women to rise to executive levels. So share with us from the corporate perspective, how from the Shell experience you've managed to do that, to be able to move women up the ladder and to get more women into this area.
Thanks, Ziki. I'll share perhaps a few highlights. I think we've recognized, so we've been on this journey for a long time now, 20 years. And when I was speaking to Ziki, one of the things that I mentioned is that this is definitely not a check in the box. I think Shell as a company does embrace diversity. Yeah, and as Amanda said, is diversity of all types. Yeah. So I think one of the areas which we've realized from the start is that the only way that you can build a multicultural, multinational company is to ensure that you have an inclusive workplace. Yeah, so we started on this journey 20 years ago where women at senior leadership was a single digit. Yeah, 2012 we were at 17%, and now we're about 26.4. Yeah, like I've said, and you know, one of it is setting targets, but I think that is still very much a check in the box. What we realize as well is that it's the entire ecosystem. So I think as again what you shared, Amanda, that I think firstly, we do have to work closely with the governments, right, to make sure that we would do as well, you know, as what has been stated and more. Yeah, so some of the things that we do is to make sure that we work with communities. Yeah, so I did share with you, Ziki, that we're quite active in terms of working with institutions. So like in the UK, Royal Academy of Engineers. In Singapore as well, we work with the universities here. And we also work with the Science Center, you know, to actually reach out to younger children, to interest them. Yeah, so these are boys and girls, not just girls, right? Boys and girls in terms of, you know, big energy questions, right? The difficult questions like water, food, energy. Yeah, so this is our way of contributing to create that impetus and the interest in STEM activities, yeah, initiatives. That's one. I think we also realize from a Shell perspective that it's about growing our own timber. Yeah, we've always done that. That is, you know, one of our deep embedded beliefs. So at the graduate level, when we bring people from the universities, we actually have an equal number of males and females. Yeah, I think what we want to do is to make sure that the pace of progression for women and men will start to equalize. We still see that for women, the pace of progression, you know, perhaps at what we call the first rung is still more difficult. Yeah, and again, those are questions that are not just a check in the box. Those are questions around culture, beliefs, how work is done, you know, where work gets done, and what are the responsibilities of men and women, you know, in their home and at the workplace. So I think, you know, those are like, you know, all the questions that goes beyond check in the box, includes policies. So how do you equalize in terms of policies and benefits that supports women? And how do you engage? And this is not about fixing women, but how do you engage the workforce so that men and women both understand that the value of having, you know, both equally contributing will actually benefit both. Yeah, so these are just some examples of the things that keep us busy in Shell.
Lovely. Thank you, Lynn. I just want to do a bit of a shout out before I ask Emmy for her thoughts. I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Emmy. But before that, I want to give a shout out. We've got participants from, well, quite a good diverse group of participants from India, Pakistan, Malaysia, Australia, obviously, Singapore, of course, Hong Kong. So I think, you know, it's a nice group of folks that have dialed in. I think we had about 90 participants at its peak. Some have dropped off, but I would encourage, if you have any questions, I see some questions already on the Q&A box. Please get your questions in and we will get to those shortly. Back to Emmy, I'd like to get your view from the Japan perspective. Mindset shift, gender equality. Give us your perspectives.
Thank you. So, in my opinion, one common purpose in promoting diversity is that we can actually generate merits from encouraging diversity and inclusion. So, we already talked about gender equality and international collaboration, but diversity lies not only in this, but also in different age groups, different cultures, different work experiences, and physical disabilities like blindness and loss of hearing. So let me give you one example. My agency recently announced the change of its science museum director to Dr. Chieko Asakawa, a blind lady who is an IBM fellow. So IBM fellow is a top honor given to a very small group of IBM's engineers. So you naturally come to wonder what her accomplishments are. So she invented an internet navigator to read out text for blind people, so it's easier for them to surf on the net. She also invented an app which tells blind people facial expressions of the person they are having a conversation with. So a blind person like Chieko can ask a question. Hey, why are you looking so sad today? Then I guess she would still make a great engineer if her eyesight were okay, but her inventions would have been very different. What I wanted to emphasize here is that we should make use of diversity and let the merits of diversity known to the public. Like we appointed Chieko as our next Science Museum director because of achievement in research and development. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you for that, Amy. Very inspiring indeed. And on that note, let's move that conversation to entrepreneurship and women entrepreneurs. We have two over here, Julie and Sydney. There are not enough women entrepreneurs. Your perspectives, how do we attract more women into the science field and into entrepreneurship? Julie, maybe I'll start with you, and I do know you have a video you wanted to share.
Sure, yeah, definitely women are very much underrepresented in terms of clean tech. In the clean tech industry, it's only 5% of companies that are founded by a woman. And we know from the great example that Emmy gave from studies that diversity really increases the success of a company. So I do have a video that I can share just about our technology and our journey. Before I answer that question, I'll share my screen and show you the video here. So this is our vessel.
Explorer is an autonomous surface vehicle designed for versatility. It can operate autonomously, or a remote operator can control it manually. The vessel is designed to endure all sea states and is self-righting using our patent-pending roll bar. This utilizes buoyancy to self-right rather than adding unnecessary weight to the vessel. Data Explorer is a solar electric boat, which allows it to remain offshore for months at a time. While having excellent offshore capabilities, it is equally at home in coastal or inshore waters and can precisely navigate grid surveys. The keel is shaped to enhance tracking.
So I think some of the challenges in getting female entrepreneurs is that we are underrepresented, and you can't be what you can't see. So we need to encourage more visibility in women entrepreneurs, more highlighting the possibility of mentoring other women entrepreneurs, and really change the environment. So some of the successes that I see that are driving more women to follow these careers is making it more accessible. So for example, having venture capital funds that are focused on building women-led companies. You know, women are still really underrepresented in the amount of dollars they raise from VCs compared to their male counterparts. And part of that is because they're still very much underrepresented in terms of the venture capital industry. So by shifting that, I think that's really important. Encouraging entrepreneurship in deep tech spaces, so in STEM fields, university programs, accelerators that have a focus on developing those skills in women as well as in others. But it's very different being a researcher and building a company, and to bridge that gap to go from R&D to innovation, it can be very challenging. And so finding the support network to help you move that way. I think government can play a significant role in this. You know, Amanda really eloquently articulated what a great role government has done in Australia. And I think, you know, now we see the leadership government plays in helping us navigate through this health crisis. And I think there might be a role for bigger government in a lot of countries. And so part of that could be putting a focus on diversity and really incentivizing and making it more of a priority for companies. So I think there's a lot of different approaches, and it's great to, you know, hear Lynn talk about what Shell has done and seeing organizations, big organizations, you know, set an example of what it can do and how it helps their organization thrive. And even some of the challenges we face today in not being able to get together in person, not being able to be in Singapore for this event, it opens up other opportunities where we can bring together people from all around the world, and we can do that for women leaders, for women entrepreneurs. We can learn from each other and build a community and support each other and focus outwards, building those international collaborations. So I think we really do have a great opportunity here to put a priority on diversity and use all of the things we've learned through these hardships to move that dial.
Thank you, Julie.
I'd like to quickly add to that, if that's okay, Ziki.
Sure, Lynn.
Yeah, Julie, what you said really resonated. I think especially around the fact that women do not have enough role models. Yeah, and what we try to do, you know, at least in terms of envisioning, is that you know, we need for women to be supported at every level. Yeah, so we do actually have dedicated women's programs, for example, yeah, for young talent, emerging talent, and then for senior women, right? The women who are the role models. And at different levels, the emphasis is different. For emerging talent and young talent, the focus is on, you know, what their aspirations are and what professional developments they want to get. And for the senior women, it's around the questions of what's their influence and what can they do to support other women, to pull them through, but also then what's their influence externally. Yeah, so everything that you just said, Julie, around making the connections, collaborating, pulling in, you know, other great minds, and bring a community of women, yeah, so that more women can support others. And I think then as well, I have to emphasize this again, influencing and supporting the men. I think sometimes in all these women conversations, the men feel really left out. Yeah, but you know, it's not men versus women, women versus men, but it's about all of us together to create true diversity of thoughts. Yeah, as what Amy has said. So I just wanted to kind of echo that, Julie.
Agree completely with you, ladies. Thank you, Lynn, for that. Sydney, I do want to get your perspective because you've been in science, you've been an entrepreneur for so many years. I'm sure you have very, very wonderful insights to share with the team here.
Yeah, maybe more from a bit of a more personal experience. So I started companies in 2 decades ago, and then 10 years ago, well, more than 10 years ago, and then within the last 10 years. So I can kind of see the sort of the differences with respect to different areas. So one is the external environment. And this is all with respect to the Singapore environment. The other one, well, Singapore and ASEAN, excuse me, the other one is with respect to more personal development. So I can see a difference when I was, more than 20 years younger versus 10 years younger versus, now, what difference that could have made. So maybe perhaps as a start, I would like to think that entrepreneurship is difficult regardless of the gender. So it's not really a gender issue, but it is just difficult. And when it is deep tech, it just added the complexity to it. So if we are a little bit sort of more realistic about that, one would say that, first and foremost, you need to have the social, economic, sort of ability to be able to think entrepreneurship. So I say that from the perspective of also other factors. So when you're in your 20s, when you only ever have yourself to think about, it is a lot easier to say, okay, I'm just going to take the plunge and do whatever I want. But then when you're in your 30s or 40s, that becomes a much harder question to answer. And of course, especially when you're in your situation where you have also family to think about. So, realistically speaking, really that socio-economic environment for anyone thinking of entrepreneurship is a realistic one and is a practical one. Of course, when it comes to deep tech, that maturity is an important one. I think when it comes to deep tech, the maturity of having seen the whole life cycle of how technology becomes and innovations become a product that actually makes a direct and tangible impact. I think that, that really can only happen with age because you have gone through that whole cycle. Maybe age is not exactly the only thing, but with experience, that really can only be acquired through experience, through having actually been through that cycle. And then you kind of see and you learn from the experience. So I think that's maybe the other thing that a lot of people, from my experience in interacting with a lot of would-be entrepreneurs, is that they tend to equate, academic knowledge to now I know how to do it. So I think there's a big gap between that. And I see that even today, looking at how we are trying to, when I use the word even, is because I see that even when we're trying to help companies, these are not even entrepreneurs, these are already companies. And I see a big divide between companies that really aspire to become a deep tech company and the experience that they have, they need to have, but they lack in order to get there. So I think that maturity and experience is very important for any entrepreneur in deep tech, not just gender. I think where gender makes a difference is really where it comes to support, the support network, where family is concerned. Because, at the risk of sounding generalizing, we are women after all. So just because we want to have our own career, aspirations and all that, we still have, at the end of the day, biological clock. And we still, at the end of the day, have this, most of us anyway, this mother instinct to want to nurture our young. So as a result, there is that conflict, of how do you balance, and as a result, it also plays into which stage of your life you want to take. You want to balance it such that family is, maybe lower, and this is a time when you want to focus more on your career. So from my personal experience, that specifically is the most challenging one from a gender perspective. Everything else is perhaps less gender specific. I would like to echo what, I can't remember whether it was Julie, Amanda, or Lynn was saying earlier, that we must also remember that in the quest for pushing this gender equality, that we must also remember that we also need to make sure that we don't overdo it. There's, equality just means equality. It doesn't mean that we have to be better. So we have to also be sensitive to the needs of, the other half. And, so in terms of that, it is, when we put everything together, when we think about entrepreneurs and especially deep tech entrepreneurs, and then now when we added an additional complexity of a female entrepreneur, we kind of have to take all that into account. It's not one or the other.
It's really a total view, isn't it? And I echo your point. The challenges for entrepreneurs are exponentially more than, say, on a personal level. I feel I'm very blessed to have been able to have achieved a career, but also being close to the family, not having missed my children's childhood, because at the end of the day, that was the most important for me. And I could not have done that. It would not have been possible if not for my bosses and for the culture within the organization that respected that and was very supportive of that. So I think that, it really echoes the point that that mindset shift is needed, and it is really the sum of all parts that bring everything together. It is public policy, it is also the organization, and it's also the individual, right? Being respectful of the organization's needs, but also doing the needful from your own personal level. So with that, I do want to take some questions, because there are some questions in the Q&A box. The first one for you, Amanda, from Alexis. She wants to hear the views on social enterprises and impact investing. And your view, Amanda, from the government perspective, what are the hurdles for social entrepreneurs? And for Julie and Sydney, your views on the hurdles for social entrepreneurs. Amanda?
Right, great, yeah, great question. So social entrepreneurship is a big element of the government's. Pre-coronavirus was a key element of our strategy to build an inclusive community in Victoria. And so we have had a number of leaders in this area in the social enterprise community. There's one group that I'll call out called Social Traders. They're based in Melbourne, but they work across Australia. And they're like, and I'm probably going to mischaracterize them, but just in the shortness of time, they're like an incubator for that. They support social entrepreneurs put together the business case and the pieces that they need in order to run a successful business. So we see it as an important element of our community, and putting support behind it.
Any takers, Julie or Sydney? Your views?
Sure, I can just quickly answer that. In Ocean Tech, a lot of it is very much social entrepreneur and impact kind of entrepreneurship. So when we raised our pre-seed round, it was primarily from an impact fund, from impact investors. I think when you're a social entrepreneur, and you're building a business that you want to be profitable and attract venture capital, you have to find that balance where you have to still make money while, you know, creating a better world. And I think technology and deep tech does have the power to do that, because we're creating innovations that can allow us to do things differently, more efficiently, better than it was done before. So I think we're in a great position to be able to combine social entrepreneurship with building a company that can return value to its investors.
Yeah, I absolutely echo that. Technology really has made that a lot more accessible. In other words, to level the investability and the accessibility. So, you know, so many technology businesses today are actually based on, you know, an app or, you know, some technology aspect that would make things a lot more accessible to people in remote areas and, you know, different economic status of the countries. So that really, from a social enterprise perspective, is something that has been able to be achieved as a result of technology. And I think Ziki mentioned there was another question.
No. So I think you both addressed that from the social entrepreneurship perspective. So thank you for that. I do want to move on to the next question because it's got a couple of votes there. It's with regards to women in leadership roles in communities and in corporates, and you know how do we facilitate them or us being taken seriously by male colleagues. Lynn, I think this is your area. You're in a male-dominated industry. I think you would give very good first-hand knowledge, and your Shell already has specific initiatives that are looking to address this.
Okay, very quickly, yeah, and happy to have the discussion further. I think we are taken seriously. Yeah, so I don't think that is the question. And that's barking up the wrong tree. I think it is really about the ecosystem. Yeah, that we do need more role models, because with role models, such questions that, for example, Sydney had raised, dilemmas, gets brought to the forefront. Yeah, because you need to be in that position to know what the challenges and difficulties are, right? So what are the considerations of women at different stages in their lives? And what is the participation of men? Yeah, so to put it really bluntly, because of the shortness of time, you have now, you know, more men in senior positions, most likely, you know, with their partners who perhaps do not have equal share of, you know, the position at work, or maybe even do not work. So if that is, you know, their viewpoint, then how do you expect then for them to have a different viewpoint at work? Yeah, so I think, you know, that's just to touch on the little bit around, you know, what companies can do in terms of shaping the policy, creating the environment where women can thrive. But I do want to assure that we are taken seriously. Yeah, so you know, that's how I want to wrap it up.
I want to take that point. So I have always been a firm believer that you are the master of your own destiny. Okay, if you want something, you have to create your own opportunities, and you have to be bold enough or confident enough to go and grab it, right? So I think that we as women sometimes, you know, we need to take that step. And if we want something, go get it, right? And you know, push that change. And I think it's again back to each for equal, right? What are we doing ourselves to facilitate this, right? Rather than waiting for policy change, waiting for, you know, changes within the corporate environment. Admittedly, that makes it a lot easier, but we ourselves need to be accountable and take our own action. So that's just my own personal opinion.
I absolutely agree. I think we shouldn't be a victim of what I like to call a self-fulfilling prophecy. We shouldn't draw a box for ourselves. I absolutely agree with that.
Lovely. Okay, last question here for Julie and Sydney as female entrepreneurs. Could you please share how you've had to adapt your business direction and your team to the new landscape given the current health crisis?
Maybe I just say something quickly first. I think earlier we were talking about how some of these practices like work-life balance, work from home kind of thing, the mindset change, we have had to do a tick box and policy to make that happen. And I think with this pandemic, actually, we have been, the external force actually had sort of made us take such steps. And now that we've been doing that, basically you take a step back and you go, actually, this can work. Actually, I think from that perspective, it's probably, I hope it would make things easier for, women who are thinking of doing this entrepreneurship and trying to balance that dilemma at home, because then, really a lot of times, it means that you need not have to take that trip because you can do this kind of online conference and discussions. And so I think personally, I feel from that perspective, it's making a lot of changes, and it's making at least me and a lot of the people in the management level thinking that, getting us thinking that this can be something that we can get used to.
I echo that, because when we moved our events online, there was this fear that, oh, there'll be less participants, but we found that people are hungry. People want to still continue to learn and hear opinions and have these discussions. So this is the new normal, and I see that, this is going to continue even beyond pandemic. Julie, do you have a perspective to that question?
Yeah, I just wanted to really agree with what Sydney said. We've obviously moved our whole team to working from home. We've put in place the practices to be able to communicate effectively using Zoom and other tools. And it's really made us realize how effective it is. And in many ways, it's actually increased our productivity. So that's something that we're going to continue to put in place, more of a work from home strategy. And I think that can be really powerful in allowing more people to work in these positions who maybe previously weren't able to. So whether you have, something at home you have to balance, you have young children, something like that, you need more flexibility in your schedule, or even enabling more of a remote workforce. So you want to get the best of the best, and you're in a small community, we're in Victoria, BC, you can reach out and have somebody remotely working, and we'd be more welcome to adopting that practice than we have been in the past. And the other thing that I would just say is that, obviously now we don't travel, there's no conferences, there's no trade shows, yet there are a lot of events online. Organizations, companies, accelerators are putting things like this online. So it's easier to connect with the community that we want to tap into than ever before, and get that perspective from, Singapore, from Norway, from Europe. So I think these things are here to stay. It's going to profoundly impact how we do business in the future, and that's a good thing.
Lovely. And with that, I think it's a nice way to end. I think we've had wonderful perspectives from all the panelists. Before we do that, I do want to have very quickly get each of the panelists to give your final thoughts, closing thoughts as we close this session. Amanda, may I start with you, please?
I came across a really good quote the other day, and I think it's really relevant to what we're talking about. It was in the context of coronavirus, and it was saying that recovery is something each person owes their neighbour, and I think that's the fact on coronavirus. But I think it's also, particularly for us women, something that relates to gender equality, and we've all got responsibility to ensure that there's a pipeline and that we build women's confidence to have a go.
Thank you, Amanda. Emmy?
Hello. I think really these circumstances made us think how to make best use of the workforce we have, not only women, but other components like seniors and handicapped people. So we really have to make sure that we emphasize on meritocracy from the diversity, and which really made us think the new norm of the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Lynn?
Well, I think it's to just make sure that our voices are heard and to not filter out whatever that voice should be, and to create the inclusive workplace.
Thank you, Lynn. Sydney, your thoughts, please.
So I came across this very interesting video just yesterday. The topic is hindsight is 2020. So I thought it's so appropriate. I think 2020 really has given us a chance to do a lot of reflection, and to allow us the opportunity now to level playing fields for a lot of things, not necessarily just gender, but diversity as a whole. And I like to see that as really the new beginning of humanity.
Here, here. And last but not least, Julie.
Yeah, so I feel like, this crisis, these challenges we're all going through, it really is an inflection point, and we have to decide if we're going to build a stronger, better future from it. And diversity and equality and inclusion are all parts of that. And I think we can use what we've learned from this to reach those goals, and we'll all be better for it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. It has been most inspirational and truly an honor for me to be moderating this panel full of wonderful women, very powerful, inspirational women. I thank you for your time, and I would invite all participants, I guess, to reach out to each and every one of us here on the panel on LinkedIn so that we continue to stay connected. And again, please join the handle on LinkedIn for SG Women in Tech, so that we get connected as a community to drive diversity across the industries and across international domains. And please follow SGInnovate as well across the social media channels. And with that, thank you, panelists. I appreciate the time. And thank you to all participants. We look forward to seeing you again in other events.
Thank you. Thank you, Ziki.
Thanks, Ziki.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Stay
Bye.
healthy.
Equal.
Equal.